What's up everyone? In this video, I'm going to be covering a topic that's going to have huge impacts on the real estate market, but isn't getting a lot of coverage. And that's talking a little bit more about the lifting of the eviction moratorium at the end of July. Now, some of you may be familiar with the eviction moratorium and others might not, but it revolves around the process of evictions, which is essentially when a landlord takes the legal steps required to remove a tenant from the premises. Now, there could be a bunch of different reasons why a landlord would need to do this, but by and large, the largest proportion of evictions are due to non-payment of rent. Going back to March of 2020, Congress passed the CARES Act, which was at the onset of the pandemic and put a halt on all evictions for non-payment of rent. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, also called CDC, actually continued this in September of 2020, and that's kind of how they were continuing the effort to protect tenants. The moratorium stated that for anyone who was either laid off or had an impact to their wages due to the pandemic, they would qualify for this protection that was given to different tenants out there. Now, many people have strong feelings either for or against the eviction moratorium, but it isn't quite as cut and dry as you might think. Many tenant right groups are lobbying for the extension of the moratorium over fears that there could be a huge wave of evictions because there are still large portions of the population that have been impacted by or are recovering from the pandemic. On the other side, a lot of landlord groups are arguing that because of the loss of income from their rent, they are now at risk for potential foreclosures because they haven't been able to sustain the investments they've had in these homes, and foreclosure groups are also coming at them on the other side. So you can kind of see how it creates this difficult situation where tenants are worried about evictions and landlords are worried about foreclosures. And foreclosures are when a bank or a lender, whoever gave the loan on the home, are able to recall homes if they haven't been paid for their mortgages. And that's where landlords are arguing, if we can't start getting some source of income for this, a lot of these tenant groups are going to be out of their home anyway because the house is going to get foreclosed upon. So let's take a quick step back to see how we got here. As I mentioned, Congress passed the first bill in March of 2020, and then the CDC passed the bill in September of 2020, which was originally set to expire as of January 1st, 2021. They extended this again until March 31st, and then they did it one more time until June 30th of 2021, and that's where it brought us up to the present day announcement that they were actually having the Biden administration and the CDC granting one more extension until the end of July 31st, 2021. The CDC came out with a statement stating that this is intended to be the final extension of the moratorium. So, if in fact they do intend to follow through with this, it kind of leaves us wondering, what does this next phase post-eviction moratorium look like for the real estate market? We've already started to see states and groups arguing the legal authority of the eviction moratorium to have been able to go on this long, making its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. And separately, you can track that there are a lot of evictions being filed now, even though they can't be processed. In fact, according to Princeton University's Eviction Lab, it was stated that there were over 6,000 evictions filed for in the week of June 19th, bringing the total number of pending ones up to 375,000. To make matters worse, it's estimated that over 11 million Americans are behind on their rent and could face evictions once the moratorium is lifted at the start of August. All this is happening while at the same time, we're starting to see a spike in rent prices where, although we saw a lull when the pandemic happened, we're getting to pre-pandemic levels and they're actually continuing to increase, with rents up 2.3% in June and a total of 9% since January. So what does all this mean? Well, if you're a renter, it's important to know there was a lot of funding included in the pandemic relief bill that was passed by Congress in spring that you may have access to funding for. I actually, for my people here in Virginia, put a link to the Virginia Rent Relief Program that may have access to some of that funding, but make sure that you take the time to learn what the criteria are to actually qualify for this. Another thing renters can do is actually have a conversation with their landlord. It's important to know that landlords are people too, and if you're both showing an effort to pay your bills as well as can set up a reasonable plan for you to get caught up, they would actually be looking at this as a source of income again, and it's better than getting nothing, so you are going to be able to maximize your chances of being able to stay where you are and hopefully working out a good deal for both parties. For landlords, you've been prevented from following through with evictions for non-payment of rent during this time, but it's important to know that the moratorium doesn't forgive non-paid rent. So you are due all of that money that you haven't been paid. And based on traditional landlording policies, you can charge late fees and things like that. But because of this moratorium, you're going to need to be really careful about making sure that you're following the correct policies and procedures according to both traditional landlord things as well as aligning to the bills that Congress and the CDC have passed. So make sure that you're speaking to legal counsel if you're going to try to follow through with any of these steps. Also, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of things getting lifted in terms of foreclosures now as well, which is a different topic, but will also impact you. So you're going to need to be tracking against that to make sure that you're not at risk of foreclosure. An article stated that they're going to be starting with groups that are over 120 days behind rent. So you're going to start wanting to think of ways to either start collecting some source of income from your current tenants or figuring out how you're going to get back to collecting rent on your actual investment properties. And what about everyone else that's not a tenant or a landlord but likes to track against the real estate market? Well, I don't think any of us know exactly what's going to happen, but this is going to have direct impacts on housing inventory, rental inventory, as well as just the overall state of the market. So even though we don't know what's going to happen, this topic's going to have impacts one way or the other, and it's going to be something that's important for people looking to buy or sell a home to track against to make sure that you're making a good investment at a good time. Leave a comment if you think you know what's going to happen or if you have a hunch of which way things might go next. I hope you found this video helpful, and make sure to press the like button as well as comment to leave any thoughts you might have. And please make sure to subscribe so that you can get updates on any future videos I put out about the home buying process or real estate in general. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.